Hey guys, welcome back to the last week of Healthy Conversations. I'm really excited for this week, Ellie, because we have Dot Tyler from Tear Fund coming to chat with us about social justice. I think this is a really important part of the environment and like how it affects people. So we're going to be having an interview with Dot, and yeah, let's go.
Dot, tell us about yourself. Tell us a bit about who you are. It's great to have you here today.
Oh, it's a real privilege to be with you guys. My name is Dot. That is short for Dorothy. So if you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, that's my name, my actual real life name. I live in Cardiff, so a little bit away from you guys. I am supporting England in the football from Wales. It's not the best. I'm gonna have to come over the bridge back to Bristol for when we get to the final. Come on, it's gonna happen. It's coming home. And I work for a charity called Tear Fund. Tear Fund is a charity working in about 50 countries all over the world, helping people lift themselves out of poverty. And I work in the youth team, hence why I get to hang out with you guys.
Amazing. And today we're going to be chatting a bit about climate change and social justice and how the two link, and all about what that means for us and what that means in terms of how we approach our view of climate change. And first of all, I wanted to just ask you, how did you come to have such a passion for social justice? Because I've listened to a few of your podcasts, I've watched a couple of things, and you have such a passion for social justice, and especially in terms of climate change, but also in a more general sense. And how did that come about? What inspired you?
That's a great question, Gina. Thank you. So I became a Christian when I was 16 years old, in a family who are not Christians, but they wanted to teach me how to be good. And apparently, if you go to church, you'll learn how to be good, which is sometimes true, except Mum, don't watch this on YouTube, because what it actually taught me was how to lie about where I was on a Sunday morning. But don't do that, guys. Lying is bad. But one of the things that did, it was meant that I, growing up all the way through school and through high school, had friends who were Christians. And one of them in particular was absolutely amazing. She would keep inviting me back to stuff at church. And no matter how many times I said no, she would keep asking. What an amazing friend, right? And then one year after GCSEs, when the summer is really, really long, and you think in advance, you're like, this is going to be the best summer ever. It's really long. And then you got halfway through and it's actually really boring. So dull. Nothing happens. I grew up in south of Manchester. Nothing happened. There is nothing there when I grew up. So I went back to this church service and I heard, not for the first time, because I grew up going to Sunday school a little bit every now and then, but I think for the first time I properly listened to the fact that there is shame in my life that separates from me from God, but God had paid the ultimate sacrifice in the person of Jesus. And he was offering me there and then an invitation for my shame to go away and for my eternal destiny to be secure, totally sure I'm heaven bound. And at 16 years old, I was like, yes, absolutely. That 100% want that in my life. And I became the most, so you'll probably get this, my vibe. I'm kind of an enthusiastic person, as the most enthusiastic person in church, in the youth group. Oh my gosh, if there was a question, I wanted to be the first one to know the answer. And I literally, imagine this, it's so embarrassing. I would sit on the front row of church with my notepad and pen next to the speaker. It's so embarrassing. Guys, also don't be that person unless you want to end up like me, and then it is what it is. But I'm super enthusiastic about the gospel, love Jesus, totally sold out. But it wasn't until I was 22 years old, so I'd been a Christian for 6 years, I'd gone to uni, yada yada yada. It wasn't until I was 22 that somebody said to me, Dot, you cannot follow Jesus without following where he goes. And in the Bible, where does Jesus go? All the time. He goes towards the marginalized, people who are oppressed. He goes to the edges of society, towards people living in poverty, to those that society completely disregards. If you want to be a follower of Jesus, you need to go where he goes. I had lived 6 years of following Jesus and justice didn't feature. to the point where I'd sit on the front row, and in my notebook, if somebody got up to talk about global poverty, I would shut my book. Because in my mind, that wasn't important in the story of Jesus. But of course, and you guys know this better than me already, of course it matters. In my young brain of like being a Christian for a few days, I think I'd put, for God so, you know that verse in John 3:16, you all know it. You know it by heart, right? But it says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And one of the things that I did was I would put my name in there. For God so loves Tyler that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And I lived as if the whole gospel was just for me. Like, other people are invited, but it's my job to invite you because the whole gospel is about me. Kind of wrong, right? That's kind of a massive problem for you guys. It's a problem for you, Gina, because it doesn't have your name in that verse. It has my name. What is that about? But somebody was speaking again when I was 22, and they said, actually, you know what, that verse where it says world, that's where English sometimes, because the Bible wasn't written in English, you guys know that. The Bible wasn't written in English. The original word, actually the better translation for that is for God so loved the cosmos. The cosmos. Every single thing he made. The stars, the planets, the bits in between we don't have a clue what's in there. The planet that we live on. The trees, the animals, the tiny ant, and me. For God so loved the cosmos. And I remember being 22 and saying to God, you know what, I'm really sorry that I made your invitation to follow you this small. I made it just about me and your will and purposes for my life and what I can do to serve you. But actually the will and purpose in God and the story God's saying is this big, you know? And I remember having a conversation with Jesus and saying, I don't want other people to have been Christians for 6 years before somebody says, if you want to be a follower of Jesus, you need to follow where he goes. So that's my story, I guess. And I think since then, I've been a Christian a little bit longer now than 6 years. And I am learning every day that the more I understand about justice, the more I understand about the world, the bigger and the more majestic and the more mighty the God I follow is. Because I'm trying to be part of his story rather than trying to make him part of my story.
Wow. That's amazing. I really love that line of like, if you want to be a follower of Jesus, you need to follow where he goes. I think that's so true and really challenging. I think at whatever step you're at, right, like there's a bit further that you can go into that. Like you could be in the position that Dot was in where it was just all about you, or any other point. Like I definitely agree with that. And so you've got this whole thing of like caring about social justice and stuff. How does that link into like climate change? Like I think, yeah, like what's the link between the two? How do they meet?
So let me tell a story for this, because climate change often either gets talked about from a science point of view, and we all think we're back in school, and at which point everyone's like, oh my gosh, yawn, she's come to talk to me about school stuff. Or it gets talked about in a kind of dramatic way. But what's really important for me about the connection between social justice, or justice as a concept, and climate change is this: climate change impacts people living in poverty first and worst. So we cannot avoid the fact that climate change is a justice issue. So there's a girl called Jessie. She lives in Malawi. And a few years ago, their weather patterns were predictable. They could feed their families, their community could survive, their community had ways of doing things that worked. And it is in the last few years that actually the impact of climate change has impacted where she lives so dramatically that, and it sounds really like, why does it matter if you can predict the rain? The rain is no longer predictable, which means that they can't grow crops that survive the rain and the floods. And then, because when it doesn't rain, it is now drought. So you go from literally one extreme of abundance of rain that's unexpected to drought. You can't grow anything. It's really hard to grow anything in that kind of situation. And so she's now in a position alongside her community where they cannot feed themselves. She can't feed her family because everything is so unpredictable. And it's really hard actually having a conversation with Jessie about hope. And this is the thing I hate. I hate it about injustice, and I hate it about the climate crisis, is it steals hope from people. One of the things that Jessie says is, I find it really hard to hope for the future. But we've got a Jesus that invites people into life and fullness and a future that is extraordinary. Hope is one of the gifts that the Lord gives to humankind, and injustice and the climate crisis is stealing that from people. Oh, it gets me every time I talk about it. I'm a little bit like, what? One of my colleagues, the people I work with, he's called Hannington, and I was talking to him about the communities that he grew up in and he loves and serves. And he said this, which I also will never forget: climate change is bullying the most vulnerable in our society. I grew up in high school. You guys are in some sort of high school or have connection with people, even if you're homeschooled. We can relate to bullying. But to be bullied by something you have no control over, there is this big thing called climate change. That's hard, right? So the connection for me between being somebody who follows Jesus where Jesus goes, and Jesus goes to the vulnerable, to those that are being oppressed. That's what I said right back at the start of this question. The climate crisis is impacting people living in poverty first and worst. As a follower of Jesus who's trying to love God and love others, when we live in a world that's as connected as ours, my love others is global. Like, my love others isn't just my friends who are easy to love or the people I already like, because then that request of Jesus is a really easy request. Dot, would you like the people you already like? Yeah, no problem, Jesus, I've totally got this. Actually, what he says is love God, love others, full stop. Regardless of whether you know their name, of whether you will ever meet them in your life, but they walk on planet Earth alongside you, love them. It's a really big deal.
Yeah, that's so good. I think it's so true that, like, we sometimes don't see like the human effect of climate change so much, that it can become like a science thing, especially because in the UK it doesn't seem to affect us as much, right? Like, you know, for us, it's not the end of the world that it's a little bit warmer on a summer day, like we get to 30 degrees rather than like 25. Whereas, like you say, like for someone who's already struggling, like those changes of temperature or like the rain, like you were saying, like that just makes anything. Well, I think I've heard of it being spoken about as like a threat multiplier or something. Like, it makes whatever like poverty situation that you're in, it will just like amplify that. And yeah, like you're right, it's so true that then we're called into that. So what is it that we can actually do to help this? Because like you were saying about your friend Jessie, like she lives so far away, and especially in a corona time, how like we're not able to go over and like help her grow her crops. So like, what can we do as people, young people in the UK, or like anywhere, what can we do to change that, or to do what Jesus does and like walk into those situations?
Yes, I would love to tell you that there is some sort of glamorous, magical prayer we can all pray and make it go away. I believe prayer is powerful. I believe it is committed people who commit to praying that will see dramatic change. So first off, I would ask you, please would you pray? The climate crisis and injustice feels like a mountain, doesn't it? And the temptation to feel overwhelmed and therefore just pretend it's not a problem is real. I'm a normal person, same as you guys. I might work for Tear Fund and believe in this stuff, but oh wow, there are days I want to be an ostrich and put my head in the sand, because it's easier not to know, right? But we have got a God who, even when we look at the size of a problem like the climate crisis, our God is bigger. Our God's bigger than that problem. And he says, if you ask in my name for that mountain to move into the sea, it'll move. So first off, I would encourage you, please, would you join a generation and a movement of people who are praying mighty prayers to a God who can move mountains. Second one, and this connects to praying, be informed. Like, we pray our best prayers because we know what's going on. So if you're old enough, on your Instagram accounts or your YouTube channels or whatever it is, follow accounts that are going to help you know what's going on in the world. Purposefully be interrupted in your social media scrolling by stuff that's going to help you worship God and pray to him about the world. A really cheeky plug, if you would like a place that is really good at helping you do that, at We Are Tear Fund is amazing. But there are also lots of others. BBC News, amazing. Newspapers. But purposefully, like, do it as a discipleship thing. Put things on your social media feed that are going to interrupt your normal with things that are really holy and are going to help you love God and love others. So first thing, pray. Second thing, be informed so that you can pray better. And then the third one, have integrity. How many times have you guys heard this in youth group? Like, have integrity, walk the walk, talk the talk. Don't say one thing and do another. Nobody loves that. A few examples of that would be, if you are somebody who's saying, yeah, you know what, I want to make a difference. What are you doing about your waste or your recycling or the number of t-shirts you buy, or loads of different ways that you can go, you know what, I'm just going to make a small change in my lifestyle, because every small change makes a little difference. And eventually, if we all did little things, it would add up to big things, right? But we also do it because we have integrity. So think about your waste, think about the clothes you're buying, think about the chocolate bars you're buying, or whatever it might be. A friend once said to me, every time you spend your money, it's like casting a vote. So what happens if we spent our money as if every time it was a vote? I'm spending money on this t-shirt because I vote for people being paid a fair wage and the materials being sourced sustainably. And I'm going to buy this bar of chocolate because this bar of chocolate's paid somebody properly. Or I'm not going to buy this bottle of water because the land does not need more plastic bottles in the water. I am going to vote and buy a reusable bottle. Just a thought. And then the last one for me is big businesses would love you to believe that you buying a bamboo toothbrush, for example, is the only thing that's required to change the tide on the climate crisis. This is not true. It takes people in power behaving differently and doing different things. And here's the thing that's really interesting. People that are influencers, are leaders, one of the first things that those people can be doing is listening to you. Your voice has more influence than you realize. And if you don't take away anything else today, please hear that. Your voice has more influence than you realize. So as it says in Proverbs, use your voice to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. So whether that is world leaders who can be doing better, speak up, sign petitions. If that is your favourite clothing company, message them on Instagram. You know what? The weird thing, they reply. Or even like, what if you would talk to your church leaders and say, church leaders, we love you, we adore you, we love the church. Perhaps we could do a little bit better. Here's how we'd like to help our church do a bit better. So those are my 4 tips on help. Pray, be informed, have integrity, and speak up. We want to hear you.
That's amazing. There's such practical ways. Like, I really like the idea of when you talk about integrity, of like every time you spend your money, that's casting a vote. I think we can be so quick to just be like, oh, like I need this, let me just buy it. But you're so right, like it's like whatever you're investing in. Yeah, I love that idea. I wrote loads of notes, guys. Thank you so much, Dot. That was incredible. So much good stuff there.
Wasn't that such a good conversation? I think it's so helpful to hear from someone else who's external, who knows really what it means to care about social justice. As we have with the other weeks, we've got 3 challenges for you around this topic. Our first one is research how different communities around the world are affected by climate change. Our second one is maybe you could even write to your MP about a social injustice caused by climate change, maybe using some of the research that you found from the first challenge. And finally, why don't you consider donating to an organisation that helps with social justice? Maybe even donate to Tear Fund. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning into this last episode and also for watching the episodes before. We've loved having these conversations and I hope that you've learned so much from it. Do let us know how your challenges go this week and from any of the previous weeks as well. We would love to hear about how this might have changed the way that you act around climate change and also just in your day-to-day life. But yeah, that's all from us now, so bye. See you later.